Hi, this is Rose Patient from Patient Therapies, and it's my job to make you a vegan expert. Today, we are going to talk about the 7 most elusive nutrients for a vegan. As you know, being vegan is very noble. You will have a low carbon footprint, which is great for the environment, and you will have reduced animal cruelty. You may feel a higher degree of spiritual expression because of these choices. And you know that following a vegan diet can be very healthy, but you may be putting your health at risk by substituting those meat-based meals with junk. As I've said before, it's very easy to be a junk food vegan. A core principle of this webinar is to teach you how to assess your nutrition. I've introduced you to Chronometer, which will show you the quality of your meals and whether they are meeting your needs. There are some nutrients that are traditionally found in animal products, like B12, zinc, calcium, iron, essential amino acids, and the omega-3s found in fish. Vitamin D is also a common deficit, but this is also true for meat eaters. We will address that soon. In this video, we are going to have to find a new source for these nutrients. So let's focus today on understanding these 7 special nutritional challenges and what you can do about it. These are the 7 nutrients that are common deficits for not only adult vegans, but teenage vegans. Remember, 50% of vegans are teenagers. Anyone under the age of 21 is still experiencing periods of growth where their nutritional needs are going to be higher. Now is not the time to be a casual vegan if you are under the age of 21. What happens if you don't pay attention to these 7? There are very real consequences when your nutrition falls short. Long-term deficits may lead to the following: brittle bones, fatigue, slow healing, weak immunity, impaired nerve function, impaired brain function. Unfortunately, these type of things develop over time, which then presents you with a problem. If you don't see it coming, it's like falling into a hidden pit. Then you're going to have to figure a way out. And then you're going to have to make sure that you don't fall into it again. We are going to take a good look at each of these 7 by discussing the following: their food sources, their functions, their bioavailability, the RDA for each one, and a strategy for each one so that you can avoid deficits and illness as a result. Let's start with calcium. It's the most abundant mineral in our body, but only 1% of that calcium is being actively circulated. The level of calcium in the blood is tightly controlled, and the excess is stored in your bones. You may be familiar with the fact that calcium is an important part of your bone matrix, but did you know that it's essential for muscle contraction, and it also helps your blood clot? Did you know that calcium is the most difficult nutrient to get enough of for nearly everyone on the planet? You could follow a diet that has 25% of your calories come from the dairy industry, and that actually was the recommendation back in the 1970s. But these days, we know better. We know that dairy products are full of saturated fat, and that is not good for a body. So there are very few diets that embrace consuming large amounts of dairy products. It's just not a great way to get your calcium. It really is best to get calcium from more natural sources like dark leafy greens, broccoli, almonds. You can even get it from blackstrap molasses. Fortunately, we know how to supplement many foods with calcium. So tofu, plant milks, juices, and yogurt all have calcium added to them. And when I say yogurt, of course, I mean soy yogurt. So bioavailability is about how well your body can absorb or assimilate the calcium from your foods. And young people have a higher absorption rate than adults. Teenagers absorb calcium at the rate of about 60%, which is awesome. And adults, they don't need as much, and their absorption rate is closer to 20%. See, the human body is really well designed, and it is programmed to absorb the right nutrients at the right time. So, if you're growing, you obviously need more calcium because you have a higher absorption rate. We know that dark leafy greens are very rich in calcium, and this sounds like a terrific option for a vegan. There are components, however, in dark leafy greens that can bind calcium. The oxalic acid in dark greens can inhibit the absorption of calcium. Therefore, you need to have a range of calcium sources to ensure you're going to get enough calcium assimilation. Now, we do know that calcium and vitamin D are what we would call best friends. When you take in vitamin D at the same time you're taking calcium, it will enhance the absorption of calcium. This is why you see vitamin D and calcium added to plant milks. Remember that weight-bearing exercise promotes the deposition of calcium into your bones, and this is good for your bone strength. The RDA for calcium for teenage years is 1,300 milligrams. This is the amount that you want every day. Your body is capable of holding on to additional unused nutrients for a short period of time. So maybe one day you take in a lot of calcium, your body can hold on to it for a little bit, and then that will make up for days where you don't really take in quite enough. I believe that instead of getting focused on the daily intake, it's better to target a weekly intake for your nutrients. Because calcium is so widely used throughout our body, it is a good idea to know how much you can get from certain foods. If you follow these recommendations, you will get all the calcium you need. 12 ounces of plant milk daily will give you 600 milligrams of calcium. That's nearly half your RDA, and 12 ounces is a cup and a half. Orange juice is often fortified with calcium as well, and 1 cup will give you 450 milligrams. Other products are fortified with calcium as well and can provide you up to 250 milligrams per serving. Nuts gives you 75 milligrams of calcium, and I'm talking just 1 ounce, like 10 almonds. Seeds are the same way. They can provide you up to 75 milligrams daily. Dark leafy greens can provide you up to 100 milligrams. And I always recommend beans because beans are very nutritious and they are a good source of calcium. If you take all of these in 1 week, your total intake will be 9,100 milligrams per week. That comes out to 1,300 milligrams per day. The recommendations I've given you are rich sources of calcium. But remember that there are many vegetables and grains that can provide an additional 10 to 15 milligrams of calcium here and there as well. Some people struggle getting enough calcium in their diet. If you feel that you're having a hard time getting in enough calcium and you want to supplement, you definitely want to consider a quality calcium supplement. Have you ever seen somebody take an antacid for their indigestion? It helps settle their stomach. It reduces the acid reflux. That is typically made from calcium carbonate, and some people have said, hey, that's not a bad way to get a little extra calcium while you're at it. Unfortunately, calcium carbonate is not as well absorbed by the body as other types of calcium. It's much easier on your body to take calcium citrate. Our second nutrient of concern is vitamin D. Most people don't realize how essential vitamin D is to their health. Not only does it enhance calcium deposition to the bones, but it plays an important role in your immune system, and it's a powerful antioxidant. Your body creates vitamin D when exposed to UVB rays from the sun. It's important for vegans to consume vitamin D fortified foods because the only other natural source for vitamin D are animal products like salmon, eggs, and beef liver. So you will want fortified sources like cereal, soy, plant milks, and juices. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means your body can store it. Most fortified sources of vitamin D use the form of vitamin D3, but the active form of vitamin D in the body is vitamin D2. Fortunately, our kidneys convert vitamin D3 to its active form of vitamin D2. Again, the human body is absolutely amazing. Now, our RDA for vitamin D is 600 international units. What? All right, so this is a way to measure vitamin D that is going to be phased out. The government recommendations are moving away from using international units because it's a little bit confusing when most of the other nutrients we talk about are measured in grams or milligrams or micrograms. Now we are going to say that the RDA is 15 micrograms. The only reason I include that whole international unit thing is that is still on some labels. Eventually it'll be phased out. Here is your strategy. You need to guarantee your intake by consuming a fortified plant milk or juice every day. If you live in a southern climate, you may be able to get enough vitamin D through sunlight exposure throughout the year simply by getting outside for 15 to 30 minutes every day. But is it southern enough? Those living at latitudes above the 37th degree north have trouble making vitamin D through skin exposure except during the summer months. Okay, English please. What this means is that for most people living in the United States, you're going to need to supplement with vitamin D. So let me show you this map. That red line is the 37th degree parallel that we're talking about. If you live in the shaded region, you are at risk for vitamin D deficiency. Our third nutrient of concern is vitamin B12. B12 has critical functions in our nerve cell function as well as in our brain cell function. And B12 performs a host of other essential functions. And when I say host, I mean it does a lot. So make sure you get your B12. B12 does things like help form blood cells, helps form DNA, helps with energy metabolism, it assists our liver with detoxification, and it helps to export harmful substances out of your cells. B12 is abundant in animal products, especially meat and eggs, but it is rare in the plant kingdom. Now, why is this? It's because plants have no requirement for B12, and thus there is no mechanism for plants to produce or store B12. The best source of natural B12 is from nori, which is an edible seaweed, and spirulina, a blue-green algae that we've talked about before. It's a complete protein, and it is usually available in a capsule or powder form. You can buy dehydrated sheets of nori at most grocery stores. This is what sushi rolls are often wrapped in. You can also use nori on your salads. You take one of the sheets, you crumble it up, and you put it on top of your salad. Fortification is a good idea for B12 because of how many important functions it's involved in. It is most famously found in nutritional yeast, but also in plant milks, cereal, and even some probiotics. Check your labels. Before you know it, you will know which foods have the B12 that you need. By taking a whole food vitamin, though, you can boost your body's ability to absorb B12 because the B vitamins are synergistic, which means they assist each other. And you won't ever get too much B12 because it is water soluble and the excess is flushed out of the body through the kidneys. By the way, this often makes the urine look darker yellow, and it's just the excess B vitamins being flushed out. So, I'm adding a slide here to address some of the common claims about B12. Now, you may have heard that garden soil may have B12 in it, but this is often the result of fertilizing gardens with cow manure. This makes the soil rich in B12, and then that B12 can be absorbed by the plant roots and stems of vegetables. I'm not sure that many vegans are going to be happy knowing this information. Studies of hydroponic gardens show some promise when plants are fed a B12-rich solution, but access to hydroponics that use this process will probably be difficult to find. I live in a very residential area and have access to a fair amount and a wide variety of different vegetables from different farms, but I have never seen hydroponics advertised and what they use to feed their plants. So it would take a lot of research. It's one of those things that I just can't recommend until it becomes more common. You may have heard that microorganisms in the soil produce B12, and to buy mushrooms that are sold with a little bit of soil on them, and that little bit of dirt can actually be good for you. So they tell you, don't wash those mushrooms. Okay, so this has been studied, and this practice of relying on dirty mushrooms from soil to provide an adequate amount of B12 just doesn't hold up. You might get a little bit, but certainly not enough for every day. Now, you may have heard that fermented soy products provide some B12 because the fermentation process requires bacteria, and those bacteria produce B12. Unfortunately, most fermented soy does not use B12 producing bacteria during the production process. It uses other bacteria. So this option cannot be relied upon. Now, there is lactobacillus that produces B12 in the human colon. So you might be thinking, well, if we got bacteria producing it, why do we even need to eat it? Well, it's because B12 needs intrinsic factor to be absorbed. Intrinsic factor is in our ileum, which is higher in the digestive tract. This means the lactobacillus in the colon would have to travel backward up the GI tract to make this work. So again, this is not an option. Reliance on any of these as your source for B12 will likely run you into a B12 deficit. Now let's take a look at some strategies to help you get enough of this important vitamin. The RDA for a teenager for B12 is 2.4 micrograms. There are a lot of ways to achieve this, and it mainly relies on fortified foods. Try these strategies. You can take a whole food vitamin. You can use nutritional yeast to fortify any food that you eat. You can sprinkle it on salads and sauces. You can crumble up nori and put it on your salad. But I find that a lot of times I don't remember the nutritional yeast in the nori when I'm putting together a salad. So I have gotten into the habit of making a complete plant protein drink that gives me all the B12 I need. Here's my recipe. I use 8 ounces of soy, chia, or hemp milk. That's going to have B12 in it. I add a tablespoon and a half of nutritional yeast. That alone gives you 15 micrograms. I also add a teaspoon of spirulina. I put it in a jar, I shake it together, and I drink it. I like the taste of it, and I feel very balanced when I have this drink every day. Give it a try. I think you'll like it. On to the fourth nutrient of concern, iron. Let's talk about why iron is so important. Most people know that iron is an integral part of our red blood cells. It's part of the hemoglobin molecule that transports oxygen throughout your body. But you may not know that iron is needed for hormone and DNA synthesis. And also, we need iron for the muscle protein myoglobin. To understand where vegans can find iron, they need to ask themselves this question. To heme or not to heme? See, there are two forms of iron available to humans: non-heme iron and heme iron. The non-heme iron form is found in plant foods, and it is less well absorbed than the heme iron in animal foods. Let me say that again. The non-heme form of iron in plant foods is less well absorbed than the heme iron in animal foods. Now, when I was growing up, I was raised on meat and potatoes, and even then, I had a hard time absorbing the heme iron in those meat-based meals. So I am very aware of what foods I need to eat in order to keep my iron levels up. Rest assured, with a little bit of practice, you can get all the non-heme iron from plants that you need from food sources, such as dark leafy greens, spirulina, tofu, buckwheat, quinoa, legumes, pumpkin seeds, raisins, broccolis, almonds, and dark chocolate. Many of these foods will become a regular part of your balanced vegan diet, and you can also get iron, if needed, from fortified foods. These include nutritional yeast and a whole food vitamin. There are ways to improve the bioavailability of iron. Your body will absorb 10% of iron that you take in. That sounds like a low amount, but that's the same for everyone. But if you take food that is rich in vitamin C, it will enhance your absorption of iron, so your percentage absorbed will be higher than 10%. Your body also recycles iron. A red blood cell lives in the body for 120 days. And remember, iron in the hemoglobin molecule that is in the red blood cell can be recycled and used when new red blood cells are developed. If you don't have enough iron for your red blood cells to begin with, and we know that hemoglobin molecule transports oxygen, the end result can be iron deficiency anemia, and that presents typically as fatigue. Now, disclaimer time.
This is disclaimer time.
I'm not a doctor. I am not telling you to self-diagnose. The problem with fatigue is that it can be caused by many things. Many things. You can't assume that just because you're tired, you're not getting enough iron. So go to your doctor, work with them to pin down the underlying cause. Also, trying to supplement with iron tablets through self-diagnosis can be constipating and unnecessary, so work with your doctor. The RDA for iron is different for males and females because we lose a lot of iron if we bleed. Women have their monthly period or menstruation, and so they are going to lose iron every month. Also, women in their childbearing years have a higher demand for iron relating to pregnancy needs and breastfeeding needs. So the female body during this time will increase its ability to absorb iron by up to 20%. Human body's amazing. It knows what you need when you need it. So your job is to provide it the right nutrients. Here are some strategies. Eat a dark leafy green 5 times a week. Include iron-rich legumes like lentils and lima beans. Here I want you to think soup. Adding almonds, raisins, and pumpkin seeds to your salad every day can boost your intake by 2.5 milligrams every day. Add a vitamin C-rich strawberry to your spinach salad. Not only is that going to be delicious, but it will help boost the absorption of iron from the spinach. And by the way, all the ingredients in my CPP drink are sources of iron. Number 5 on our list of nutrients to be concerned about is zinc. Zinc is what I would call a super mineral. It is essential to healing tissues. It helps your immune system fight off bacteria and viruses. It's critical for hormonal balance, and a deficiency of zinc can delay sexual development. And finally, it helps us in taste perception. Such a wide range of important functions. Talk about a multitasker. Natural sources of zinc for vegans include legumes, walnuts, chia and hemp seeds, wheat germ, tofu, oats, quinoa, and shiitake mushrooms. Now I'm giving you these sources, but you really have to ask yourself, are these foods that you're eating on a regular basis? Because these are the foods you need to eat to get these nutrients. If not, you may want to consider fortified foods like cereals, nutritional yeast, and plant milks. And for zinc, I strongly encourage you to take in a fortified source. Why? Because zinc is abundant in meat and it's readily absorbed in meat. But for vegans, it's not. There is a compound called phytates. This is found in cereals, grains, and beans, which inhibit the absorption of zinc. Now, you don't want to inhibit zinc because you need it for your immune system. You need it for your growth and development. You need it for healing. So don't mess around with zinc. The problem with phytates is such a big problem for vegans that dietitians agree that vegans need to consume 50% more of the RDA to compensate for the phytate problem. What's our RDA? It is, for meat-eating teens, 9 milligrams per day for females and 11 milligrams per day for males. But because of the phytate issue, a vegan female will need 13.5 milligrams per day and a vegan male will need 16.5 milligrams. This is a great example of how tracking your nutrition on Chronometer for 2 weeks will help you identify if you are in the right range and getting these critical nutrients. If you're not, then you can apply some of the strategies here and see if that helps. 1 serving of fortified cereal provides 19 milligrams of zinc. Wheat germ is also very high in this mineral and can be easily added to sauces or sprinkled on salads. 1 ounce of hemp seeds added to a smoothie can provide 3 milligrams. Legumes like soy and lentils, include them twice a week. Quinoa, that's a complete protein as well, and it's another great source for zinc. Now, I don't want you to get too hypervigilant about zinc because on the flip side, excess zinc above 34 milligrams per day can cause stomach issues and headaches. So make sure you're getting 13.5 or 16.5, whichever applies to you, and then you'll be all set. The 6th nutrient of concern is omega-3 fatty acids. Now, when people think of fats, they think, oh, all fats are bad. I've heard people say this, and it's absolutely not true. There are many fats in your body that are beneficial. You want to stay away from trans fats and saturated fats. The others, pretty much good for you. So omega-3s are pretty much at the top of the list for healthy fats that you want to have. There are 3 forms of the omega-3 that we're going to talk about: EPA, DHA, and ALA. Take some time to learn these categories. Why? Because these fatty acids, EPA and DHA, are the active forms, and they're needed in every cell membrane in your body. Every cell membrane. We have billions of cells in our body. They keep the walls of your cells flexible so that the cell can easily move nutrients in, and then they can also allow cellular waste products to easily get out. When you don't eat enough omega-3s, your body's gonna need something to build those cell membranes with. And if you eat a food that has saturated fats or trans fats, the trans fats will be used as a substitute for the omega-3s in your cell membranes. This is a problem because trans fats are rigid fats, and they will make your cell membranes rigid. This creates difficulty in transporting nutrients in and out of your cell. Can you see the problem? Cells become rigid, cells make tissues, tissues become more rigid, tissues make organs, and then your organs don't work so well. If you really want healthy cells, tissues, and organs, you need omega-3s. We need omega-3s to build the myelin sheath that covers your nerves. Your nerves transmit signals throughout your body. This is a critical need. Omega-3s also help build hormones and reduce inflammation. We've heard a lot about how inflammation can contribute to chronic disease. While that correlation is being researched, we do know that it is pretty strongly correlated. We don't know if inflammation causes chronic disease, but omega-3s go in the other direction. They are anti-inflammatory. So, as you can see, omega-3s fall into a category of a healthy fat. It's a hard worker in your body, and you will need to get it in the right amounts. Sources for omega-3 are primarily from eating fish. Fish provides ample amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, but they're not vegan. Natural vegan sources of omega-3s include algal oil, ground flaxseed, avocados, chia and hemp seeds, walnuts, and to a lesser degree, you can get some omega-3s from your dark leafy greens. Fortified sources include a supplement from algae that I have mentioned before. It provides the omega-3s that you need. Now, we talk about fish are high in omega-3s, and they are high in omega-3s because they eat this algae and seaweed that's very high in omega-3s. And if that's all your diet is a fish, to eat these sea plants, then you're gonna have a high degree of omega-3s in your body. So, vegans can get a supplement made from these plants that will meet their omega-3 needs. So if you don't want to take in this omega-3 from a supplement, and you've heard that you can eat walnuts, and that has ALA, which is an omega-3, that should be able to provide your omega-3s. The issue with ALA is that only 5% of ALA gets converted to EPA and DHA. So can you take in enough ALA from walnuts, flax seeds, avocados? Well, it's possible, but there are other nutrients that can impair your absorption rate. Isn't this always the situation? I mean, we've learned about oxalic acid, we've learned about phytates and zinc, and now it's omega-6's turn. It may take you a little bit of time to process all of this. Just go back and listen again. Eventually, it'll come together for you. Plant sources are rich in omega fatty acids, ALA, and that ALA gets converted to DHA and EPA. Those are the active forms in your body. Too many omega-6s can get in the way of absorbing your omega-3s. So, these omega-6 fatty acids are complicating your life. The thing about this is that omega-6 fatty acids are found in plant foods like soy and corn. So you don't want to take too many of these. And these two foods are common additives to processed foods. So if your vegan diet is heavy on soy and corn, you're going to have to rethink that because it's going to interfere with absorption of omega-3s. Excess omega-6 consumption is inflammatory. So while omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, omega-6s are inflammatory. So you want to tip that scale. You want the omega-3s to have enough of an influence to keep your body in balance. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, so make sure you're getting enough of them. We know inflammation is increasingly being linked to chronic disease, so we want those omega-3s. They're anti-inflammatory. We want to make sure that you are getting enough of them. Now, I know this is a lot to think about. And in some of the literature or maybe some of the books you've read, you might even hear people getting into recommendations saying, aim for 8% of your calories to come from omega-6s and 2% of your calories from omega-3s. If you ask me, no normal person is going to look at their calorie intake and make that assessment. A practical approach is what you need. So thankfully, Chronometer can do this. Get focused on a good balance of vegan foods as I've recommended, and then look at your weekly summary. Your omega-6 should be about double of what your omega-3 is. Okay, so how much ALA do you need? Now wait a minute, what do you mean? Aren't we talking omega-3s and DHA and EPA? The government has not created a recommendation for DHA and EPA, but they do have one for ALA that they feel is a safe guideline. Females need 1.1 grams and males need 1.6 grams. Consuming a high amount of ALA will allow for enough conversion of EPA and DHA. Okay, so let's review. If you get ALA from plant sources like walnuts, 5% of that can be converted to EPA and DHA. Here's another strategy. Cook only with olive oil or canola oil because they limit the omega-6s. Oils are one of those things that if you choose the right one, you're really doing your body a good thing. I would strongly suggest you do not cook with vegan soy margarine. Stick with olive oil and canola oil. You want to consume up to 4 grams of chia, hemp, flax seeds, and walnuts. And if you're going to use flax seeds, you need to get the nutrients out. If you just add a tablespoon of plain flax seeds, they will just go through your system and act like fiber. You need to grind the flax seed to take that seed covering off so you can get to the nutrients inside of it. Your body will not be able to do it on its own. You can simply grind flax seeds in a coffee bean grinder, but you can also buy ground flaxseed. Now remember, if you're going to buy a bag of ground flaxseed, it will need to be fresh. You can't buy it and then 6 to 8 months later decide to use it. It's probably not going to have the nutrient level it did when it was freshly ground. So of course I'm going to recommend that you grind your flax seeds right before you put them in your food. You can also take an algal oil supplement made from algae that's rich in omega-3s. We are at the end of our list, and your brain can relax a little bit because we've already discussed number 7 and our final nutrient of concern. We already know that essential amino acids are needed in every major organ system of the body. All these functions are critical, and we know that there are 9 amino acids that you have to get from food. And we know that plant foods don't usually have all 20 amino acids. There are a few, though, that are complete plant proteins, meaning they have all 20 amino acids. Remember this? Soybeans, chia and hemp seeds, spirulina, nutritional yeast, amaranth, quinoa, and buckwheat. And then you can also get protein powders that are vegan, plant-based protein powders that will cover all 20 amino acids. You can readily absorb essential amino acids when they're included in your diet. The RDA for each essential amino acid is listed in this chart here. Teens, you will follow the recommendations for the adults in the far column. As a reminder, Chronometer will have these values automatically in your nutrition data. This chart that you see here is from reference article number 16. I've included the website URL in the reference slide, as well as for all the other references I've made in this presentation. Now, the best way to wrap your head around whether or not you're getting enough essential amino acids is to track your meals. I know that I sound like a broken record. I know that I sound like a broken record. I know that I sound like a broken record. Remember that I thought the variety claim was enough and wasn't too worried about getting the right proteins. But when I tracked my vegan meals, I had only a weekly average of 61% of my essential amino acids. And like I said, I had to go through my own learning curve. I do believe the variety claim is correct, but this is a big but. You have to learn your way into eating properly as a vegan, and that takes time. So as a review, here's your strategy. Eat variety. Track your nutrition. Practice with vegan recipes that use complete plants because they will have all 20 amino acids. Make that complete plant protein drink every day. And minimize processed foods and meat analogs. I really believe that information is power. That's why I went into such depth in this webinar to teach you about all these different nutrients. The more you know, the more empowered you're going to feel as a vegan, and the more confident you're going to be in your food choices. I've listed many references at the end of this presentation. I've also created another PDF that provides additional research for these 7 nutrients. At the end of this PDF is an example of how to use another PDF called the Diet Assessment Worksheet. I want you to print that worksheet out. When you look at Chronometer every week, it's going to help you set goals for nutrition and figure out what foods to add. Great job! By learning this material, you have now become a vegan nutritional expert.